So Sula is a company that's set up in 1998. Rajeev Samant came back from the US, Stanford grad, worked there, came back from the US. Came up with the idea of setting up a wine brand given the Napa Valley culture that he had seen. By the way, California dominates the wine production in the US. It is Napa Valley that is by far the leader of wine producer in the
I think
US.
it's something like 70-90% as well. It's like the Maharashtra of the US.
Exactly, right. So their production has been going down globally. Like in the last decade, the US wine production has actually been going down. Napa is the only region that has sustained. So being in that region, which is very close to Stanford, I think there was some inspiration that he came back and used that to actually set up Sula Wines. Now, the first bottle came out somewhere in mid 2000s or early 2001s. That's when the industry started. That's when also policies were in favor. One of the interesting things that I've noticed, and this is also something that's happened across different alcohol markets, or could be probably be said about highly regulated markets, is the second player generally has a lot more benefit. The second mover advantage in highly regulated industries is actually pretty interesting, right? Everybody speaks about the first mover advantage, where you can create a new market, create a moat, and you can be a market leader. But in highly regulated industry, what the first mover has to do is work with the government to create favorable regulations, which is a nightmare in itself, right? Because these could take years. We've seen that in the drone market. We've seen that where the early drone players had to work with the government, spend 5-6 years to come up with favorable policy. But a new entrant who comes in today or came in the last year or so obviously has the policy to start focusing on directly on building a profitable business.
I just want to add here that we recorded a full episode with Vipul Singh from Arav Unmanned Systems, all about the drone industry and all about what they did in order to change the government regulations for drones. So if anybody's interested in this part of the discussion that we're having, that I think in about another week after this episode releases, we should be releasing the episode with Vipul as well. It's all about how they got the government to change the regulations. Very fascinating discussion.
Exactly, right. And he's one of the founding members of the Drone Federation of India. That's what it tells you, that you have to create these associations, you have to lobby the government, and you have to create favorable policies. But the second player obviously comes in and can only focus on the product. What happens with working with the government for so many years is you could burn out before the industry actually truly opens up. For example, there was this company called Chateau Indage, which was the wine market leader in India since the 1980s. They came up 18-20 years before Sula came about. 2001, they were the market leaders. 2007, they went bust because of the financial crisis. They had raised, the money and financing sort of didn't fall in place, and they went bust. Same thing happened, not the same thing, but another interesting, analogy of the same second mover advantage is Gateway Brewing Company in Bombay were the pioneers of getting the favorable policy for brewing, microbrewing in Bombay, right? Based on the work that they did, there are significantly more successful microbrewers that are out there that have been able to take their beer pan India. Right. So this whole thing about highly regulated markets, it might make more sense to be a second mover than be a first mover, is interesting to me. So they came into the market in 2001, and since then they have grown steadily. Sula has been very focused on doing the right kind of marketing, doing the festivals, creating the resort property, working with celebrities who come to their resort properties, and using that to create the market for wines. And as the founder of Fratelli was saying, doing all these events and sponsoring the Lit Fest. So it's been a slow, painful process to build what the market has been today. 450 crores for a 20-year-old company in this day and age, when we look at venture capital backed companies that can go to 100-200 crores in revenue in 5, 8, 10 years, seems like a long process, but they've done it right. They've done it in a way which is sustainable. They've done it in a way which is now profitable. So yeah, this has been the history of what Sula has done right to get to this point.